Today we're going to show you how to change the rollers in your Glideroll roller door. Let's get started. The tools you'll need will vary by model of roller door. However, generally a 13mm socket or spanner and pointy nose pair of pliers will be needed. And today I'll be using my impact driver with a 13mm socket. So if you've got one of those, it will be very handy. The first thing to do is to mark out and remove both of the guide tracks. Because I'm experienced, I don't normally mark them out, but this will ensure they come off and go back exactly how they came off. Simply place a small mark on the wall next to both tracks and you'll know exactly where they need to go when you're ready to replace them. The next thing we're going to do is to remove the tracks by taking out all the fixing bolts that secure the tracks to the wall. This can be done by using anything from a standard spanner, but today I'm using a ratchet spanner, which is much quicker. We could even use a ratchet and a socket, like this one. Or we can use my favorite tool, my 1/2" impact driver. The 13mm socket clips onto the end. And this is the quickest way possible to take out your fixings. Look at that. Most pre-2017 guide track bolts are 13mm or similar. In this instance, I have a 13mm coach bolt in plastic plugs into a brick wall, so I'm using a 13mm long socket with my Makita impact driver. And these come out of the wall very easily. But it depends what your tracks are fixed to. You might even have tech screws or timber screws or even Dynabolts. But if your tracks are welded to the post, good luck. The tracks can be removed with the door closed or open, but it is a bit easier to do it with the door open as you don't have as much curtain inside the track. But either way is fine. So yeah, while we've got the tracks off, we're just going to check the corner guide rollers in this door. These are Glideroll guide roller wheels, and this one is completely worn out. So we'll just pop it out and have a look. The shaft or axle has completely worn down to a toothpick. Check that out. So we'll just flick this one away and swap it for a new one. And yeah, look at that axle. Completely gone. This is what a brand new one looks like. It's nice and thick and it will clip into the holder really well and function as a roller should. This will keep the metal edge away from the inside of the guide track, so you won't get any squeaking and scraping noises. But because these rollers don't have a bearing, they will put a squeak out as it's plastic on plastic. So we always put a little bit of silicone spray so the axles have some kind of lubrication. If you still get any squeaking, you can use a light oil or something like HHS 2000 on the axles, but don't get any in the track or on the Nylafelt fabric. Well, that will cause sticking in the tracks and damage your Nylafelt fabric. I've checked the left-hand roller and that one is completely fine. This door obviously favors the right-hand track, which is normal. They are just a guide, so we will leave this one alone. We'll just put a bit of silicone spray on the axles. Next, it's time to replace the tracks. It's easier to do this in the open position. The door hasn't quite lined up with the line we put on the wall just yet, so we're going to have to wiggle this curtain over to the left about 15 to 20mm until the track lines up. Once we've got everything lined back up to our original mark, we can get to fixing the tracks back onto the wall. So this one ended up exactly where we want them, so that's great. Now we'll go through and put each coach bolt back in the track cleats by hand, and then we'll go through and tighten them up with the impact driver. Now just do one more final check that the tracks line up with the mark we put on the wall earlier. And then grab your impact driver if you're lucky to have one, or you can use a drill, spanner, or socket set and go ahead and tighten up those bolts into the wall. It's because these are plastic plugs, you don't want to over tighten them. Before we tighten the other track, it's best to close the door almost completely, because we want to get the gap just right. You don't want it too tight, because if we had the door open, it's easier to put the tracks in too tightly. So with the door just up a little bit from the floor, we can get the maximum gap without going too far in or out, which is about 5 to 10 millimeters of play. You don't want too much slapping around left to right in the tracks, but you also don't want to be too tight and have a jam when it gets to the bottom and wear out those rollers any quicker than you need to. So here I'm just checking the left to right play in the tracks. We don't want any more than 10 millimeters of play. You can have it a little bit more or less, but you don't want it too tight and you don't want it too much. Otherwise it will slap around in the tracks as it's closing. But as long as your door closes by hand nicely and smoothly and it doesn't jam, the gap is fine.
I'm that roller door bloke, thanks for watching.